Hello biology students, you're here learning about the digestive system. Of course, the purpose of the digestive system is to break our foods down into smaller nutrient molecules that can be absorbed directly into our small intestine, and of course get rid of any waste materials that we can't digest. So in the digestive system, we learned all of these parts of the system, and we also talked about mechanical and chemical digestion and what kind of digestion occurs in each area, if any, or what any accessory glands do. So first we talk about the mouth, and in the mouth there are teeth, which break your food into smaller pieces that increase the surface area so that saliva can mix with the food. And in saliva, of course, there's the enzyme amylase, which breaks down starches into saccharides. Tongue is an important part of the mouth as well because the tongue mixes food with saliva and just allows for that better mixing, and it also makes the food moist. It makes it into this ball of food called a bolus, which the tongue will then position at the back of the throat, the pharynx, and it will be swallowed from there. Salivary glands, I've already kind of talked about a little bit. Salivary glands, there's 3 pairs. You don't need to know what they are, but of course you do need to know that they secrete amylase, which is an enzyme that digests starch, and mucus just allows food to be lubricated so that it's easier to swallow. Okay, the structure here is in both the digestive and the respiratory system, the epiglottis. During swallowing, it folds over the trachea, remember, blocking the passage so that food can't accidentally go down the wrong tube. The tube that leads to the stomach, the tube that we want the food to go down, is the esophagus. Remember that the esophagus was a muscular tube. It was not just an open, food doesn't fall directly into the stomach. Muscular contractions called peristalsis actually push the food or liquid or whatever down into your stomach. And of course your stomach, this J-shaped organ, this is where protein digestion begins. So it's J-shaped, talks about 1 liter capacity. The lining of the stomach is mucus, and the mucus of course is to protect it from the gastric juice that's secreted, which contains hydrochloric acid. pH in your stomach is approximately 2, so you need that mucus to protect the cells of your stomach. You'll notice that there's all these folds called rugae. Cells in the stomach secrete gastric juice, which includes some enzymes, notably renin and pepsinogen. Pepsinogen is the inactive form of pepsin, and it's activated in an acid environment. So hydrochloric acid not only is a mechanical digesting factor, which breaks down food into smaller pieces, it activates pepsinogen into pepsin. And pepsin begins the protein digestion process where proteins are broken down into polysaccharides. Not amino acids yet, just polysaccharides. Now, after food has been mixed, there's coagulation of milk that happens in here with the enzyme renin. Starch digestion has already begun in the mouth, and there's some protein digestion. The paste of food is called chyme, and there are 2 muscular sphincters, one at the entrance to the stomach called the cardiac sphincter and one down below called the pyloric sphincter. After the pyloric sphincter, the chyme is emptied into the small intestine. Now remember that it's been mixed with protein digesting enzymes and hydrochloric acid, so not a very good mixture for normal cells. To prevent the small intestine from suffering any damage, the pancreas actually will secrete bicarbonate ions to neutralize that acid. So the pH jumps from a 2 in the stomach to about a 9 in the small intestine. It also, that higher pH, that basic pH, also activates another protein digesting enzyme called trypsinogen, converts it into trypsin, and trypsin will digest those polypeptides that were produced in the stomach, and it will break them down into smaller amino acids, which can then be absorbed directly into the bloodstream. Now you have to consider why these protein digesting enzymes are stored in inactive form. I talked about pepsinogen and trypsinogen. Why are they inactive? Think about it and let me know your thoughts. So the small intestine is not a very simple structure. It's muscular. Remember that peristalsis occurs throughout the entire alimentary canal. And there are also these ridges all along the inside called villi. And if you can see in this diagram, there's even tinier hairs on top of the villi called microvilli, which increases surface area greatly, allowing a lot of nutrients to be absorbed in a short time. Now in the small intestine, not only there's these microvilli and villi, the cells of the small intestine also secrete some digestive enzymes. Remember that the nutrients that you usually consume in every meal that need to be absorbed are fats or lipids, proteins, and carbohydrates, as well as water, vitamins, and minerals. Starch digestion or carbohydrate digestion, remember, began in the mouth, and it finishes in the first section of the small intestine known as the duodenum. The duodenum is where all digestion occurs. In the jejunum, the second part of the small intestine, there's some digestion, but mostly absorption. And in the ileum, the third longest part, most of the digestion has already taken place and absorption will occur here. The pancreas is another organ that secretes a lot of digestive enzymes. And you saw it when you were dissecting the pig. You saw it's kind of a yellowish, whitish gland. It does a lot more. We talk about how it controls glucose levels. But in terms of digestive system, it secretes bicarbonate ions, remember, to neutralize the acid coming from the stomach. It activates, and then that pH activates trypsinogen, of course, for protein digestion. And it also secretes many digestive enzymes to break down those sugars, carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and so on into their subunit molecules. The liver is important because it produces bile in the digestive system. That's its main function. It produces bile, that yellowish green liquid, and bile emulsifies fats. It just breaks fats into smaller pieces, increasing surface area for faster digestion, which is done by lipases, those enzymes that digest fats. Oh, yes, notice also this gallbladder near the back of the large lobe. That's where bile is stored. And then when you eat a fatty meal, bile is secreted from the gallbladder. Moving along, the large intestine. Okay, large intestine is about 2 meters long. It's thicker than the small intestine. It contains the appendix, and the appendix, of course, has a very small immune function. There's the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and then, of course, the rectum where feces is stored, and then the muscular sphincter known as the anus. In the large intestine, the main function, of course, is to produce vitamins. There's many bacteria that have a symbiotic relationship with us. They produce vitamins for us, vitamin B and K. And water absorption is another main purpose of the large intestine. Okay, and that is pretty much it for the digestive system. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and make sure you're studying really hard for the test.